somebody who you are not in communication with anymore is wait for me. This person regrets letting time go by. They've wanted to reach out and try to sort of pick up where you left off from for a while. It doesn't feel like this is anyone that did anything that they would necessarily need to apologize for, but it feels like the communication just became really scattered, became really inconsistent. Something where you might have just been like, I don't know what this person's intentions are or where this is headed. And so you stop pouring as much time and attention into them, or the expectation that they would be clear and direct and honest with you, and you're like, I guess I just should look for love elsewhere because they're not going to make a move. This might have been something where feelings were never expressed. There was just flirtation, kind of a mutual crush energy, and this person is they understand, or they're seeing you're setting your sights in other directions, and it's like, no, wait, don't leave me behind. I am interested in you. I do want something together. So this feels like somebody that they don't want to be written out of the future of your life. They don't just want to be somebody that you almost had something with in the past. So this is somebody it feels like that is getting ready to speak, to kind of come out of the shadows, come out of a period of silence that has accumulated between the two of you. So maybe this has been a while since you have spoke, or it's just they've been sort of wanting to talk, wanting to open up, and it's kind of just never the right time, or something comes up as far as an excuse is concerned, or they're sort of well, what do I say now? It's past that kind of period of time, like a grace period where I could have responded to something, I could have said something. How do I come back in and sort of explain the fact that yeah, I'm interested, I'm still interested, I've always been interested in you, but I just wasn't ready to sort of be consistent or pour into this. Or it might even be something where they're like, I don't know why I just sort of allowed that silence between the two of us to stack up. This almost feels like the type of situation where there may have been other commitments in their life, things with work. This could have been somebody that had to travel for work, or relocate, or, maybe it was I'm going to be traveling for the summer. And so, I'll speak to you when I get home, or I'm traveling for the holidays. I'll get in touch with you when I'm back in town. And they've been back for a while. It's been a month and they still haven't reached out, or, it's been 6 months and they kind of just never sort of made contact with you again. And so again, this is not the energy of anyone necessarily that would have something that they did wrong or that they hurt you to apologize for, but it's just kind of oh, they never reached back out. Let me just sort of take that as a sign that they're not interested. So you might have just sort of, rightfully so, kind of taken it oh, this person has ghosted me. This is the way in which they sort of handle that kind of letdown, or that form of rejection kind of came in this form. We also have, I want a future with you. Yeah, so this is somebody it feels like that is in a better headspace now. They've completed some sort of cycle in their life. They have freed up a certain amount of time in their life to be able to not just sort of do what they have to do to get by, but this may be somebody that's entered a cycle of actively co-creating new beginnings for themselves. Their life might even be becoming busier, but it's started to fill with things that are meaningful, that were long-term goals or dreams that they were working towards. Things where it's kind of okay, I feel like I'm headed in the right direction. I've chosen to sort of make a change for myself, and that is all happening. I feel better about myself. I've taken care of maybe, if it had to do with travel or relocating, that might have been something where things happened while they were away, or they might have even having to visit people that they didn't necessarily want to visit, like family they didn't necessarily want to see. That could have been a stressful experience. but that's over. And so now they've sort of settled back into their routine, and there's a sense of like, okay, now I'm ready to, kind of open up those lines of communication between the two of us. And I'm hearing I lost track of time. So it may even be something where, they didn't mean to kind of be silent for as long as they have, or sort of drop off as far as the communication is concerned. It may even be that you sort of hear from this person here and there. This doesn't feel like the energy of anyone you've like blocked on social media, or you've like blocked one another's numbers. So it may even be that they're still like liking things that you post. They may not be very active on social media themselves. It's maybe somebody that is just kind of like, they're in hermit mode. Like you're not really sure what's going on with them. And they've kind of like had their attention focused in other directions. But it feels like they're now in this place of sort of like, okay, if it's not too late, I'd like to pick up where we left off and try to move forward beyond this sort of period of time where it feels like things were going really well, and whatever had like motivated this person, to stop being as consistent with their communication, this is something that it feels like would have been sort of like understandable, maybe disappointing, but like understandable, especially if it's like, oh, I'm gonna be traveling to another country, I'm gonna be, really busy, I'm gonna be in all these different time zones, so I'm not gonna be able to kind of check in with you very consistently, or I've got these other things going on, and it might have even been like, I'll get back in touch when I'm back in town, or when things settle down. There might have been that mutual understanding, and then you were like, okay, is that ever going to happen? Did this person forget about me? Was that, you might have even thought to yourself, was that just something that they made up? Was that just an excuse? So this person's like aware of all of that, and is sort of like, how do I break the ice between the two of us? How do I reach out? What do I say? How do I explain this prolonged kind of absence, or something where they might even be kind of putting pressure on themselves in terms of if there's been that sort of, like you're liking things on one another's social media, or they're popping up every now and then in that capacity to kind of, show their presence for you. There may be the sense of like, okay, I'd like to experience something more consistency, or more direct communication, but how do we go about that? How do I sort of, do that in a way that it feels like doesn't just sort of bypass or sweep under the rug that period of silence between the two of you, but that is something that is almost kind of like takes note of that, and sort of acknowledges that in some way. But it's a sense of like, I am still interested, I am still excited about this, I still want to get to know you, and kind of see what can happen between us. We also have, I just want to go back in time. So it feels like something where this person might have kind of thought that they needed to just be to themselves. They needed to have all their time and energy like just to themselves. And that could have resulted in them, sort of like, I can't really talk now. I can't really communicate now. I'm not going to be able to, sort of have these interactions with you while I'm doing these other things, or I've got these other things going on. It feels like in the midst of that, in this silence, they've thought about you a lot. And there was a sense of almost like, I wish I'd left an open door between the two of us, or I hadn't made it sound so extreme, kind of like, I'll get back in touch with you when I'm later, like when I return. Because this is the kind of thing, like this person might have even wanted to send you postcards if they were traveling somewhere. They kind of like were around these different places or these different people, and there were like things, it feels like, that reminded them of you. Maybe even uncomfortable situations that they were in, that were sort of like, yeah, the interactions with you are different than the interactions with these other people. Or like, if you'd been there, you'd have been a buffer in those situations, or to have something, kind of consistent between the two of us might have been a really good outlet where I could almost, I'm hearing, remember who I am. So it feels like it's something that in your presence, they feel like they can be very authentic. They can be themselves. It's possible this energy almost feels like a friendship. This may have been somebody, that you're just friends with, but they've got these deeper feelings. And so there's the sense of kind of like anything where there's been that sort of disconnect. This is somebody that's sort of on the fence about like, okay, I want to restart that friendship, but I've also got these deeper feelings that I've maybe taken some time to reflect on. And so how to kind of bring those on board, as far as the nature of the interactions between the two of you, because this sort of time apart, it feels like, has provided them with some clarity as far as like, I want you to be more a part of my world, and I don't just want to kind of hold back on these feelings. I don't just want to resume that energy of like the mutual crush, but we're not saying anything about it. We also have, I am afraid to trust. So this is something where they're not quite sure how you're gonna take that, hearing from them again. They're not quite sure if you're gonna be receptive to this, or if this is something that, you know, maybe you've kind of thought about very sort of worst case scenarios. You've been very cynical, kind of dark thoughts because it's been a prolonged period of time. Like they said they'd get back in touch with you after the holidays, only that was months ago and you haven't heard from them. And so there's a sense of kind of like, I don't know if I can just sort of waltz in there and, hey, what's up? Like, how you been? You know, even if that would be very easy, there's a sense of that this person plans on trying to sort of begin the process between the two of you of like acknowledging some of these feelings, acknowledging this crush, you know, moving in that direction as far as the interactions between the two of you are concerned. And so there's a sense of sort of like, can I trust my instincts? Am I going to take the right approach here? Or is it something where I am going to have to end up apologizing, or maybe there'll just be some kind of wall, some kind of divide between the two of you. You know, if your feelings had been hurt through this whole process, and then there's a sense of like, maybe you're not at a place with one another openly, you know, discussing such things where you'd feel comfortable in kind of like sharing that. Because this person, it feels like they recognize that there was a lot of chemistry between the two of you. There was a lot of mutual attraction. And that was taking on momentum in some kind of way that it feels like there was an opportunity to kind of speak about that maybe before they needed to cut the contact off, before they needed to leave, before they needed to travel, and they didn't do that. And so now there's a sense of kind of like, okay, should I just come back in here? And we're playing very surface level, like, oh, hey, it's me, your friend, and I'm back, and let's continue, you know, our interactions with one another. Or is this something where, you know, it's kind of like, should I come forth with like, hey, I've had this time to think, I miss our friendship, I miss our interactions with one another, but there's more to the story than that. There's more that I need to express to you or open up to you about in terms of my feelings and my emotions. We also have, I thought about reaching out, but I don't know what to say. Yeah, so it feels like on more than one occasion, this person has been, you know, kind of reminded of you, maybe even while they were away doing other things, you know, busy with kind of other things going on in their life. There have been these periods of time where it's almost like they could feel you thinking about them or wondering about them. It feels like there have been little sort of signs and synchronicities sprinkled in both of your paths, you know, recently or during this period of time where there's been silence between the two of you, where this has not totally been an out of sight, out of mind situation. There's been this little reminder, there's been this little nudge, kind of like when you wrap up this cycle, when, you know, you finish with whatever else you have going on, not only is that like a place of completion or a point of completion, but there's also this kind of commencement to step forward towards, in terms of like, okay, we can jumpstart the friendship, we can kind of get that going again, but then there's more to the circumstance. There's more going on emotionally, or that it might be the appropriate time to start to address those things. We also have, I'm sending you telepathic messages. Yeah, so it feels like every time this person thinks of you, it's kind of like it makes them smile. And so there's a lot that is kind of like happening between the two of you in those kind of subtle realms, even though, you know, actual communication has been limited or has been cut off entirely. There's a sense of like they can still feel you. They can feel when you're thinking about them. They're hoping that you can feel when they are thinking about you. There's a lot that this person wants to say that they have held back before. This might have even been somebody that had started to develop feelings for you, but then they're like, yeah, well, I'm going to need to relocate. You know, maybe now there's a long distance between the two of you. This could have been somebody that was, you know, close to you, where you could get together in person, and now they're living on the other side of the country, for example, and they could have held back as far as like feelings and attraction to you, in the sense of like, this isn't the conditions within which to start a connection, start a relationship, if I'm going to be picking up and moving to a totally new environment. You know, this is the kind of situation where it's sort of like they know that they have liked you as more than a friend for a while. And so they've really been kind of like sitting with that, sort of like, do I say something? What do I say? Is this the right time? Maybe I should wait until later. Maybe I should wait until better timing. This is somebody that doesn't want to like risk the friendship by overstepping any kind of boundary between the two of you as well. So it might have even been something, if it's like a mutual crush situation, they weren't really sure how you felt. And it was something that at the time, they weren't like comfortable enough with sort of like we can open up to this, we can start to discuss this, we can start to explore this, because it feels like something that they didn't just want to have like a one night stand with you and then like, okay, now I'm going to have to go travel for 3 months, or now I'm going to be very inconsistent with how I can get together with you, or there's not going to be a whole lot of communication. They didn't want to like leave the situation like that. This is somebody, it feels like, that genuinely likes you. They genuinely respect you as a person. They see you as like somebody that is relationship material. And so it's almost like they were saving this situation for later, but not trying to put you on the back burner. So it feels like there's an awkwardness with that as well. Sort of like, I don't want to make you feel that other things in my life have taken a priority. This is not a circumstance where there was like a third party in the mix, but it feels like legitimately this person had things that were like taking their attention elsewhere, where it's kind of like you couldn't be as, regular with one another, with your contact, with your interactions. You would know that this person is like, okay, their focus is elsewhere, and so it's been this kind of like mutual understanding, but then they just never reach back out. And so this is somebody, it feels like, that is now kind of gearing up to, okay, I want to come back into your life again. I want to open those lines of communication, but I don't just want to sit on these feelings. Like the time is right now, or, it's kind of like there may have even been some regret at kind of that decision of saying like, I'm going to save this for later, because there's a sense of like, that's really unfair, and it didn't honor kind of like their own emotional truth. So this is somebody that's kind of, they're trying to figure out like the right words to say, and you may be picking up on some of that in terms of that energy of telepathy, as they're kind of like scripting, sort of like, how am I going to say this, what am I going to say? This person might have even kind of like written messages, text messages, emails, DMs on social media, and then they've kind of like, okay, that sounds good, no, and then they delete it, they revise it, they've kind of like gone back over this several different times, but there's definitely a sense of like, they want to take action, they want forward progress here. They don't just want to be a friend. This is somebody that wants to be more than that. We also have, you were so unexpected. So it feels like they did start off just thinking like, hey, you're a nice person, you're an interesting person, we get along, we have things in common. They considered you a friend. Somewhere along the line, pretty quickly, like pretty close to kind of like whenever this communication needed to be cut off, or ended, or sort of dropped off or became inconsistent, and now they're sort of like, wait for me, don't give up on me, don't forget about me. Right around that time where they had to step away from this situation, that's when these feelings became very apparent to them. It might have been like they always thought you were cute, or that there was something very special about your friendship, but it's something where they actually felt something so deeply that they couldn't call it anything other than like a romantic inclination. But again, like timing was a factor, because they knew maybe it was you who had to like travel, had to relocate, you had some other things going on, to where it was kind of like, I don't want to overwhelm you at this point. I don't want to, kind of make you feel that, okay, starting a relationship, that's a beautiful thing. That's beautiful to express feelings for another person, especially if it's like friendship and something more develops, that can be something that's very, very satisfying for both people. But there was a sense that this person was almost kind of like, it was uncertain if like the connection could work beyond friendship. Like you're very compatible in that friend zone, but there's a sense of like, but what if we don't succeed as romantic partners, as lovers? And so this can also really speak to some sort of fear within themselves, fear that they aren't good enough, or fear that kind of like they were misreading the signs in some sort of way, that they didn't want to ruffle your feathers or make you feel awkward in any kind of way. They themselves, as sort of like, okay, if they're the one that had things going on their side of the equation, it's sort of like, I got a lot going on, a lot on my plate. This might not be the best time to start to explore romance. This might not be the best time to start a new relationship, because I've got to adjust to a new normal, or I've got all these other things that are like pulling my attention in different directions. It feels like this person does regret though not having some kind of conversation, not at least saying, hey, I'm thinking that it might be time for this friendship to extend into something more, but this is not the time to pursue that. So why don't we just put a pin in that? Why don't we take this time to think about that, regroup, and revisit when I return? There's a lot of regret that wasn't the option that they chose, but it feels like this is almost the idea of somebody that then might have like boarded an airplane, and as they're kind of like mid-flight, they're like, oh, I should have said something different. I should have left this person with an indicator of like, I will return, and when I return, I don't just want like your presence, your company again. I want to start to, address some feelings that have arisen. You're special to me, you're meaningful to me. This connection, this friendship, these interactions that we have, they are a very important part of my life, and I don't want to lose that. Like there's a sense of I should have left you with some sort of an indicator that I wasn't ready to invest fully at the time, but that didn't mean like never at all was I ready to invest. So for a lot of you, like, get ready to hear from this person. It feels like for most of you, maybe something where you've had to like harden your heart a little bit, where you're excited to hear from them, but you're like, yeah, and if you have something to say in that regard, you're going to have to sort of show me that it's okay to be open and vulnerable, because it's been a while, or there might have even just been a moment that you had, like a last interaction, and the way that they sort of handled that or left things, or just like didn't speak on the truth of their feelings, it made you doubt, it made you question. You've kind of like, you've held that uncertainty within, kind of like holding your breath almost, sort of waiting for this person to speak. And so they know that the ball is in their court as far as, carrying this situation forward to the next level. And for others of you, it feels like you'll be very excited to hear about this from this person. You'll be excited to hear about kind of their readiness to like, okay, let's get into sort of, that feeling zone. Let's start to explore that romance, that crush. It's about time we acknowledge that. It's about time we got this started. For a lot of people, this may even be something where like your mutual friend groups might be like, good, those two finally got together. Like this is a very positive energy that it feels like around this experience, or this situation, for those of you that are resonating with this. Or even if this person has some kind of like explaining to do, or something where they're having to like put forth a bit of effort in order for you to be like, okay, I'm glad that I have my friend back, and I'm glad that we're finally like getting into that territory of emotions. Then it feels like that'll be a very beautiful thing. And for others of you, this is something where all they need to do is kind of come back in, and you're picking up where you left off, and then it's like the next step is like, okay, we're taking things to the next level, and it brings with it a lot of congratulations from other people, a lot of support from other people. It feels like the next inevitable step. Like this could be even a best friend, so it's like best friends to lovers kind of energy. So those are your messages. I hope that they resonated with you and that you enjoyed the reading. Like or comment to claim these energies. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more content that I put out here. Don't forget to hit the bell button to get notifications every time I post a new video. And if you would like to book a personal reading with me, I offer those through my Etsy shop, and there's a link for that below. I hope to see you again in another reading. Please take care and be well.